A very good morning to all of you boys and girls out there. My name is Miss Mpho Lukele. I'm from Sasolburg and I'm from the Fezile Education District. Today we'll be going through paper 3 and just some basics, remind you what's important, what to look at and what not to look at for tomorrow's paper. I hope those who are writing Life Sciences today enjoyed their paper, and hopefully you'll also enjoy tomorrow's paper. All right, I think we can start. I have a short presentation here, PowerPoint presentation for you, and it's basically general instructions and just guidelines to help you with how to prepare for paper 3. Now, the first slide is basically your general information. You all know that the structure of the paper consists of 3 sections, and that would be section A, it's your essays, section B, your longer transsectional form, and section C would be your shorter transsectional. The total marks is 100, and remember that this is the paper that carries most marks. It's 100 marks written in 2.5 hours. That's a lot of time if you manage your time correctly. Now, mark allocation. Your section A consists of 50 marks. Your section B has 30 marks, and section C carries 30 marks. That all totals 200 marks. It's very important that you manage your time thus. If you manage to spend 80 minutes in section A, which carries 50 marks, to do your planning, your mind map, whatever planning you have, your first draft and your final piece, that would be a great achievement. The rest, the remaining parts would be easier for you to go through. Then you can spend 40 minutes in section B and 30 minutes in section C. Now, these are the basic instructions. A lot of you do not read the instructions properly, and that is why you do not do well in your paper 3. I'd love to emphasize that paper 3 carries most marks, and these are marks not to be thrown away. We can all score with these marks. Now, the first one. You have to start each section on a new page. That is a given. I think it's the third instruction in your question paper, but you have to start each section on a new page. Planning for each section should be on a new page, and you start with the final piece on a new page. Do not start directly underneath the planning for that section. And for each section, you have to plan, edit, and proofread. A lot of learners only plan and edit for section A. They don't plan for section B or section C. It is very important that each section should have its own plan and editing, and there should be evidence that you have proofread what you have written. However, note that most markers have a problem with learners who use a pencil for cancelling out or for making corrections. As long as it can be evident in your final piece that you have proofread, that's all they need. You don't have to write in incorrect spelling deliberately so that you can correct yourself at a later stage. That's not the skill they are looking for. Remember that when you write, you are writing for the next person to come and read what you have written. So if what you have written is very concise and reader-friendly, then the next person will definitely be able to see that you have proofread. You have to stick to the numbering system used in the question paper. Do not create your own Roman figure system, numbering system, or alphabetical numbering system. It has to be the numbering system used in the question paper. Now, I know that this might come as a joke to you, but a lot of you just assume that if you have written 1.5 pages, then it's maybe 250 words. But you have to make sure that if you do not stick to the numbering, to the word count given in terms of pages, then you have to stick to the word count. You have to literally count the number of words that you have used. So it is important for you to to indicate the correct word count. And lastly, like I said, when you write, you are writing for the next person to read what you have written. So your handwriting has to be neat and legible at all times. Now, mark allocation. Yes, like I've already outlined that your essays carry 50 marks, but you have to note that content and planning in essays carry more marks than language criterion. So when we mark your work, we look at your content and whether planning has halted the final piece in any way. Does planning enable you to produce the desired piece of writing at the end of the day, or is there evidence somewhere in your essay that due to poor planning you could not produce good final piece? So your content and planning carry most marks. But with transactional pieces, it's content, planning, and format. So format is very important. If you're not sure about the format of the transactional piece, do not even choose it. Just make sure that you understand exactly what is required of you before you choose that piece. So what does this mean? You can write a very beautiful essay or a very beautiful letter and not adhere to the correct format if it's a letter. This means you'll be penalized and you'll lose a lot of marks. So language is not necessarily the key criterion we look at when we award marks. For instance, if your essay, the topic that you have chosen, has been misinterpreted in some way, then it means you'll also forfeit marks. So at the end of the day, what really counts is the comprehension and the interpretation of the topics. That is what is important. Now let's get started with creative writing. Remember that creative writing is something that is creative, it's personal. There is no rule for us to measure how creative you are, because creativity comes in different forms. So what does this mean? As much as there is no way for us to measure the level of creativity, but you have to bear in mind that there are guidelines that have to be used to make sure that what you have written is standardized. That's basically what it means. Now, when you start writing, especially for your essays, make sure that you appeal to all senses. Like, if you're writing about food, mention how they tasted. If you were to write a descriptive essay about the most beautiful person you have ever seen, then you have to be very visual in your descriptions. What did you hear if you're writing about something that you had, depending on the topic, but try by all means to use all the 5 senses that a human have. Well, if you want to include the 6th one, it would also be a bonus, which is the sense of humor, of course. Now, all these sensory clusterings are very important because they enhance your writing. They give it more substance.